theory that our hair loss actually affects us more on the inside than it does the outside. That is a concept that was born out of the last video I just did, where I talked about the cure for poverty not being wealth, but instead being enough. And I stumbled into that. I don't rehearse these videos, I just start talking. And once I said that out loud, actually the first thing I thought of is I thought someone already said this recently in the comments. So if you did, my apologies that you were not able to grow in the comment tree. I went back and searched and I couldn't find where anyone said it, but I feel like you did. So we need to definitely talk about this. I think this deserves its own video to talk about that. Yes, when you lose your hair, it actually affects you more on the inside than it does the outside. Obviously, it can be quite the physical toll, especially if you lose the majority of the hair on top of your head, especially at a younger age, say in your early 20s even. But yeah, it affects us in a major way, and I think ultimately when we begin to process that, we begin to understand how a guy like me, who started a YouTube channel to try to have a children's program with music and acting and stuff. If you go back down to the bottom of the channel, you'll see that's how I started out. That's what I wanted to do. And instead, you guys, my first 1,000 subscribers, decided that instead of me being that guy, I'm a guy that talks about hair loss, even though I'm no expert at all. And so for me to try to understand how I've got 1,000 subscribers basically in a year over this, but I understand it better now. And it all comes down to this. Our hair loss, as much or as little as it is, affects us more on the inside than it does on the outside. We assume that the outside world judges us based on our hair loss the same way that we judge ourselves. When we look in the mirror and we see this undeniable physical thing in front of us showing us that, hey, you are getting older, and no, you didn't win the gene lottery. You will not be Ronald Reagan. You will not have that a perfect hairline when you die. That will not be you. We have that reminder. We compare ourselves to others and think, wow, he has more hair than me and he's younger than me, or I mean he's older than me. We say all these things in our head that people don't hear out loud. It makes a lot of sense why a guy like me could end up with 1,000 subscribers in about a year by talking about this stuff, because it affects us more on the inside than it does the outside, and there's no real outlet for us to process this out loud. So it makes sense how a guy like me stumbles into this. So now I'm understanding my YouTube channel better now that I accidentally said that in the last video, that our hair loss affects us more on the inside than it does out. When we understand that, we understand better now, especially when it comes to opposite sex. When it comes to females, there are such a small amount of females who actually even care about us losing our hair, who actually even register that on their list of things that they care about, yet we put it as one of the top things. And I've always kept it at the top of things up until recently in this past year or so, as I've unpacked this through my YouTube channel, as I've had that character arc and I've understood more of myself. But man, back in college, I mean, and you've seen the old pictures, you've seen where I definitely started to recede as early as age 19, and I've provided proof of that. But you know, when I was in college in my early 20s, as I was finishing up college, I was thinking about it so much. Of course, I was single back then, and I didn't start a career. I didn't have everything I have now. But man, I really put a lot of stock on that. I mean, here's just an example. I remember graduating college, early 20s, and going to the Hard Rock Cafe. And it was like Foreigner or Winger, one of those 80s bands. And so they had this photo of the lead singer. And, you know, this was the 80s, a picture of him in the 80s. So he had like this permed mullet thing. But you could clearly tell he was losing his hair on top. And I remember thinking, because at the time I was wanting to go into music. And I thought, well, yeah, but so what if I become a good musician? If I lose my hair, then I can't be as good. And so I remember, I mean, I was always thinking about this, and then thinking about acting. Oh, well, maybe I could go to acting, but no. But then I'll lose my hair, and I won't be as good, because you never see like any dads on TVs that ever had hair loss problems. And granted, there were some, like Michael Gross, the dad on on Family Ties, but for the most part, they were more like Alan Thicke, the dad on Growing Pains, or Tony Danza, and that sort of thing. So it's funny how much this consumed me. I mean, truly, hopefully you've seen, it used to consume me. And only here recently have I allowed myself to crawl out of this poverty mindset when it comes to hair loss, thinking that the world judges me by my hair when they don't. Yet I have judged myself in the past. And for years, I mean, consider that I'm a couple months away from turning 36. My hair actually started, the whole process began at 18 for me. And I've been able to see that in pictures. So really since 18, I haven't quite had the perfect hairline where I could just have any haircut. So I've had to keep that vague hairline. And so I have spent so much subconscious thoughts about this. My point is, imagine how internal that was. Yet the rest of the world had no idea I spent time thinking about that I judged or valued myself on that. So yeah, I think I make a pretty good point. The point being is, the hair loss is much more of an internal process than it is an outward one. Over something so minor that the rest of the world sees it is no big deal, is natural. You're a man, of course you're going to lose your hair. If you don't, oh, look at those genes, but that's about it. Can we take this in? Can we process this? I feel this is a major discovery for me today, here in February 2017. It's funny because I don't know if this will be a well-watched video or not. I never know what I say, whether it's going to really ring true with people. But I feel like for me, this is a day of an epiphany. Like this really is a milestone for me. That when we begin to process, hair loss is more of an internal loss than it is an external one. Process that. When you begin to process that, you realize, like I've been saying, your value as a man is not based on your hair or your lack of hair. It's based on what the inside. And you know, I think more on the female side of this version of this. The female version is, you know, they have to tell themselves, well, beauty's on the inside more than it is the out. You know, they say that. I think this is the male version of that. The male version is, we don't go around so much worried about us being good looking overall. I think so much of us believing that we're good looking has to do with our hair. If you're subscribing and watching this channel, there's a good chance of that. And I'm going to tell you, for me, it always was. I can tell you for a fact, I never worried about me being good looking other than me having decent hair. I'm saying that very carefully for obvious reasons. But that was always how I saw myself as good looking or not, was based on that. And again, the irony. So I'm going to speed up a little bit. But yeah, I never worried about the fact that I have astigmatism in one eye, so sometimes it looks like I have a lazy eye. I never worried about the fact that my nose is absolutely crooked. It looks like it was broken. I never worried about those things. I never worried about not being buff enough. I'm like, you know what? I'm a lean guy. That's fine. Any of the things that you could put on a list of things that make a man good looking, I really never worried about any of them, except the hair. And that's just not something the world puts the same value in. This is one of my favorite videos to make because you're seeing a completely unrehearsed word vomit come out of me. This is a milestone for me. You know, I feel that I've gotten past this whole thing about hair loss, but the more you talk about something, the more you help other people and you teach it, you still become more enhanced on the subject. So even if you don't feel much character growth through this on your end of the camera, just know that I definitely have. Thank you, if for no other reason than to witness this character growth and this character arc today. I'm Nick Shell, and I'll talk about hair loss from a psychological point of view, clearly.